Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me today. This is the Tell It Like It Is podcast. I have a very special guest today, Yvette Matute. How are you, Yvette? You're breaking up right at
Well,
the
it's
moment.
pronounced Matute.
You're going to have
Sorry.
to help me.
It's
Matute?
pronounced Matute. It's very, yes, Matute.
Okay,
It's Colombian. My father's Colombian, but it's very rare you hear that last name.
Matute. Um, how are you? What's going on?
Well, I'm well, thank the Lord. Every day trying to be a better person, a better version of myself. Um, Concentrating on self-love. And then after that, concentrating on loving correctly and hard those that I love. And also rediscovering myself. And at this point in my life, the ventures and endeavors that I get into really have to be something that are close to my heart and I believe in. I started working very young, and now I'm almost like I'm retired for a whole 9 to 5, being on the hamster wheel thing. I refuse to do that again. So I'm more fashion. I partnered up with Colombian Fashion House today. Actually, I have one of their blog on today, and they do contouring. If I don't know if you can see, it just flattens everything out, smooths everything out. There's a built-in girdle and smart stretch technology. So this is just, it looks like a shirt, but there's actually a girdle in it too. I won't lie to you, it's a little difficult to get into, but when you have it on, it's very comfortable. It does not feel like you have a girdle. You do not feel constricted. You just feel nice and tight and comfortable and secure. So I'm bringing this line over because, you know, I'm pro woman, pro body, I'm pro whatever makes you happy and living your best self and being your best self. So whether you choose to have surgery or not, that's your business, it's your body. I'm here to support whatever a woman wants to do. So I offer girdles for women that just don't want to have surgery and just want to be snatched under their clothing. Another thing is with these clothing is that they actually contour and shape your body, and they bring up your corporal temperature. So you're sweating and you don't see it, but you're losing weight and you're toning as you wear the clothing. So I really like that. And then I also cater to women postpartum, because if you get into a good girdle, Latin women in New York, we've known this forever. We've been going to Queens, to the Colombians, and we've been getting our fajas. Fajas is what we call a girdle in Spanish. And if you get into a faja fast after you give birth, your body snaps back really quickly. And so that's been a trick that's been used in the Latin community for a while, at least in New York, I know about. But I know a lot of other people don't know about that. And also I have girdles for if you do decide to get surgery. I have entire girdles up to the knee that are going to compress your body and keep you in shape while you heal and make the healing process a lot easier for you. Because if you're held well, then and you have wounds, then the wounds are less likely to bleed and less likely to fester because it's like you have a big bandage on your body. And so you're protected more, and it's helped shaping you as you heal and molding you as you heal. So I'm working on that. And then the other thing I'm working on is this with you, having this conversation. It's always been something I've had a conversation with, like one of my friends, my close friends see this interview. We've had this conversation many times in different forms and different parts. Anybody that knows me, I've been preaching this since I was like 10 years old. I've been a God body. I've gone through the whole spectrum of consciousness. And now I just want to share, and I want to be I want to be a catalyst for a world that's just more full of more love. Like we're really, every day, it just gets worse and worse, and it's sad, between the politics, the race relations, the people losing God, the people losing themselves. This generation really worries me, and we don't know ourselves. So we need to start. And I think one of the reasons why we don't value ourselves is because we don't know ourselves. We don't know our history. We don't know our contributions. And so having these conversations inform people, wow, you know, I have a rich, beautiful history. And also address the things that make people uncomfortable. So since today we're discussing race, color, and gender, you know, for me as an Afro-Latina, I am the darkest person on my mother's side. My father's dark skin, he's Afro, Latino, Colombian. He looks like Morgan Freeman. He has, you know, very curly, like a little Afro, about your complexion. And my mother's looks like a Taína Indian, like really like an Aztec Indian, copper tone with the black straight hair, you know, and then the mixture is me. But then, you know, my brother, which has the same parents as me, was born with blonde hair and white, because everybody on my mother's side is white. And my father's grandmother was Spaniard, actually from Spain. So it's like being an Afro-Latina, it's like I always made fun of myself. And I always had a joke and I called myself a mutt. You know, when they say, what are you? I go, I'm half Puerto Rican, half Colombian. And I'm like, I'm a mutt. And to me, I love it. I love, you know, having being raised in New York, but being Latino in culture, and also having the privilege of being raised in the hip hop when hip hop was really hip hop. You know, I was in the 90s. I went to school at Mason Cameron. And so I really got to learn that part and be a part of my youth. I had a great 20s. I was, my teens and my 20s are awesome. But now it's time to give back. You know, you look back and reflect and you thank the Lord for all of those things and you say, okay, now where are the places where I felt like I was held back? What's there for me? And then after looking at what's there for you and dealing with it, could this be there for someone else? And could I help someone else look at it? So, you know, I reached out to you because I was just really upset. And what like the trigger was I said this to you, you know, there was recently on Love and Hip Hop Miami, there was an interaction between Princess Love and Neri, which is Noriega's wife, and Sheila. And Sheila was having some kind of retreat for the empowerment of Black women. And she invited Princess Love, but she told Neri that she was not invited because she was not Black. And Neri's reaction was, but my children are Black and I'm married to a Black man. So Princess Love thought that Neri should be included because she's raising Black children. And she brought up how her mother did not, which was Filipino, didn't. I'm sorry, I had an incoming call. I had to cancel. Mothers that have children, Black or raising Black children, need to understand the issues that their children are going to face, whether they're Black or not. So Princess Love was like, they should be included in these spaces with Black women so that they know how to relate to their children and they know how to raise Black children that have good self-esteem and know how to function in the society. And they also understand because if you're not Black, there's certain things that you'll never experience. So you need to at least be in the space. Like, you know, if you're not Black, when you walk by a cop, you don't really feel upset. You look at them as a source of protection. But if you're Black and you're driving, you know, you make sure you're on that speed limit. You perk up your body real quick. You make sure that as soon as you see a cop, you don't really see it as a protection. You see it as a threat. Am I going to get pulled over? Am I doing anything correctly? So, back to what I was saying, I went off on a little tangent, but so they're having this interaction. And the first thing to me as a Latin woman was like, I was kind of upset with Neri because I was like, Neri, you're Black. I know you look light skinned, but look at your lips, look at your butt. You have curly hair. All of these things are Black features. And, you know, it's like she doesn't even identify herself as a Black woman. So how could she expect other people to identify her as a Black woman? That was the first thing I had to really check myself on. Because I was mad at Sheila first for not inviting her. But I'm like, wait a minute. How is Sheila going to look at her as a Black woman if Neri herself doesn't identify herself as a Black woman? So then I had the issue with Neri and having the conversation and like with the Latino culture, because there's a lot of discrimination within the Latino culture. Now, it's not racism, because Latino, and this is very interesting, as I was mentioning to you before, this the Red Table Talk has expanded, and Esteban's are doing it now, Gloria Esteban with her daughter. So I believe, I'm not sure, I have to check, but I believe that it's an extension of Will and Jada, Jada Smith's, I'm sorry, Jada Pinkett Smith's Red Table Talk. I think she just expanded it, and now other people are doing the same kind of work. And they had a segment on a whole episode on colorism within the Latino culture. And it was very interesting, and I'm glad that I was blessed to see that before I had a discussion on it, because it actually shifted my thoughts. I realized that Latino is not a race. Race has to do with physical features, appearances, the amount of melanin that you have. That's race. So we need to, first of all, there was actually a professor there that was studying, she has been studying Afro-Latino discrimination for over 20 years. Her name is Elizabeth Borge Freeman, and she's a professor at Harvard. And I just want to quote some of the things that she said. I'm not going to quote verbatim, but some of the ideas that she said. And she studies the impact of she studies the impact of racism on Latinos in America. And she was saying how all of these are just constructs, but we need to kind of understand these labels have definitions for them, because we kind of use them universally and they're not universal. So let's start with ethnicity. What is ethnicity? Latino is an ethnicity. It's your culture. It's usually shared by a common cultural experience, by a common language, and by a common geography. Then your race, as I said before, are your physical features, the amount of melanin that you physically show to have. And then you have your nationality, which is your citizenship. So we use these words all the time interchangeably. Right. It's kind of real that we separate them so that we understand exactly what we're talking about. So now, and why is this important? It is important that we have these conversations at the end of the day, because Afro-Latinos are misrepresented, are underrepresented. There is an issue there. So these conversations have to happen, because some people are just ignorant that it's happening. Like I realized in this conversation with that Esteban's were having, white Latinos, because now I have to separate. The way I describe Latinos, all Latinos are not Black. There are white Latinos, there are Black Latinos, and there are what we would call bi or triracial Latinos. Because again, Latino is not a race, it's an ethnicity. So
next thing I'm going to hear you say is there's Asian Latinos.
There are Latinos here that speak Chinese and have come back, just like they said in the West Indies, and you had a Chinese migration for work. So I guess that happened here, because we have Chinese stores here. And I've been to businesses, and there have been Chinese girls that speak Spanish to me. And it's so crazy to me, because I'm from New York. So Chinese people do not speak Spanish in New York.
So let's tell, you gave a context of where we're going. Right now, you're in the mountains of Puerto Rico, right?
Yes, I am. Thank the Lord. I am blessed to live in the mountains of Villalba, and it's a breath of fresh air. It really is. A girl coming from being raised in the South Bronx and going to school in Harlem every day, you have armor on. You kind of have to. You're always on defense to get by, to get through. I remember literally having to throw my brother on the floor when they raided Griselda the Gray's apartment. Which was one of the biggest drug dealers in the 90s. I didn't even know she controlled the whole eastern seaboard. And I'm walking home off the train for my brother, and I see armed gunmen running down the street in plain clothes. So I take my brother, I throw him on the floor, and I throw myself on top of him. Turns out they were raiding her. I see this later in a documentary. So yes, but anything that's worth anything is there's gonna be work, hard work, and it's gonna be a struggle for it. Nothing comes easy. So you learn that quick, and you learn that early, and it toughens up your skin for the real world.
Do you know which hospital you were born?
Yes, I was born in Coney Island Hospital.
Okay.
In New York.
Right. All right. And are your parents together? Were they together?
My parents were together most of my life, yes.
When did they separate?
When I was about 17,
Okay.
18. I was already in school, almost college.
So
But
your dad is the dark-skinned one, and he's from Colombia?
Colombia.
Colombia.
Yes.
So he's a Black Colombian.
Yes.
That's an interesting thing, right? Because most of the Colombians are...
No, that is very much a myth, a stereotype that you think the Colombians are this light skin that you see on novelas. No, you know, Colombia has a very large Black population. It had a very large enslaved, many, I think it was over 5 million enslaved people were brought to Colombia.
Right. So I'm sure your dad has his own struggles with colorism.
Yes, my father's actually racist. Like, there's this whole thing that you're taught in Latin tradition that if you're mixed, you need to marry whiter.
Right.
So somebody that's genetically whiter, so that you mejorar la raza, which means improve the race. And since I was a little girl, it was a big fight between me and my father because I've always loved Black men. And it's like, how am I not going to love Black men if the first man that ever loved me was Black?
Right. So your father, he was raised to marry someone lighter, and he did that successfully.
Good hair. Yes.
Right. He found He found a light-skinned Puerto Rican woman, and he married that. And he's like, okay, now I have these light-skinned kids.
Well, my mother's not exactly light-skinned. My mother's like a little lighter than me, especially in the sun, but she has straight hair. So the hair, he would have even married somebody darker than me if they had good hair, in his opinion. That's the thing, because the color he likes, it's the hair that gets. And even with me, I didn't really know what racism was. I learned racism in my family. You know, my first experiences was everyone on my mother's side, my Puerto Rican side, is very light. My mother is probably the darkest because her dad had some color. And I remember my cousins saying things to me like, you know, when they can blow out the hair, or in the 90s when the hump came out, girls used to do that little hump, and I couldn't do it. My hair would like curl up and it would look crazy, and nobody knew how to comb my hair, including my mother. My father used to comb my hair with a fork when I was late and he had to comb my hair. And I loved it because he had coarse hair. So he understood that you do not start at the beginning of the hair and comb through. You start at the end slowly and work your way back. My mother didn't get that because my mother goes like this to her hair and it's done. But my father understood that, and he was very tender with me, even if though it was with a fork. He got the concept, and I was going to school with an afro that day. But it was I always felt different. I always felt like I didn't fit in to an extent. My hair, as soon as I learned how to blow it out, and I had I was in high school and I had a little job, so I always had my own little money. I made sure my hair was blown out and washed and set every week. It's easier when it's washed and set because I don't have to comb it. I just wrap it and drop it and keep walking out the door. So it's also functionality, but it's also conforming, you know? It was definitely a conforming thing. It's now that at my age, that I am comfortable in my curly hair, you know, and even then, if I start working a certain jobs, I have to play the game and I have to straighten it again. Again, for practicality purposes, like it's a get up and go in the morning thing, and I don't have to worry about styling your hair and how it's gonna curl and it's cooperating for the day. A lot of people don't get that. Curly hair is very unpredictable. It curls one day one way and one day another. And so it actually takes a lot more maintenance than just washing your hair once a week and setting it and just wrapping it at night and taking off your wrap and combing it down and walking out your door. But it's also like I'd be doing it because I don't feel accepted, or I don't feel that curly hair or natural hair is as professional. That's even embedded in my subconscious because I've been programmed. We're all programmed that, you know, I worked for, my background is nonprofit management, but I always worked for big foundations. So I remember I worked for the World Lung Foundation, and that was, sorry guys, I used to smoke too, but I'm one of the reasons why cigarettes are so expensive in New York City. I was actually part of the conference. I organized the conference for the Bloomberg Foundation, and we looked at the effects of taxation on public policy. And so the idea was to change to increase the prices to stop people from smoking. Could we use policy and could we use taxation to change human behavior? And obviously we did, because we got cigarettes up to $15 a pack in some parts of Manhattan. And people are like, I'm not paying for this and dying. They're already paying for dying at $10 a pack. I'm not doing it at 15. I know that was one of my big reasons, why I stopped smoking. But I've always worked with corporate people. Even though I'm in the nonprofit sector, I always had to deal with corporations or government entities to fund us, to promote us, to push us forward, because nonprofits always need help. We're always looking for resources to help the community or to help the clientele base that we're working with. But what I really hope will come from all of this is just understanding on both sides. I think Latinos that are white don't even know that Afro-Latinos or Latinos that are Black go through this. They don't realize the microaggressions that they're seeing within the family. Like if you have a bigger butt than everybody else in the family, if you have bigger lips, if your hair is curly and everybody's straight, if you're darker, there's just little slight microaggressions. And I realized when I was listening, growing up, I resented it. And I thought they were aware that it was racist, the people that were saying it in my family, right? But when I listened to this, as I got older, and also as I listened, Red Table Talk that the Estevans were having, white Latinos they were hurt that other Latinos were experiencing discrimination, because they don't ever feel that. Right. They're actually oblivious to it. And for me, that was very healing, because I looked at it in a resentful way. Like they know what they're doing. They're conscious of what they're doing. And let's not say that everybody.
Never everybody.
Not everybody. But for the most part, I got a feeling that like white Latinos don't really get it. They're not trying to be mean. They're not trying to be racist. They just don't get it because they don't experience the things that Black Latinos experience. Like my brother is not ever intimidated when he sees an officer. He's not scared for his life. When that is a real thing that Black men in the United States deal with. You are uncomfortable. You think about your life. You think about not making any sudden moves. You think about not being, what is the word? In any way,
threatening.
Threatening, exactly. And it's like my brother doesn't have to deal with that just because of the color of his skin. And that's what a lot of Latinos don't even get. They never experience these things. They never experience somebody wanting to touch their hair and see what it feels like. And then being like, oh, it's so soft, expecting it to feel like Brillo. And then being like, oh, it's actually very soft. So I got that. So for me, that was full circle. That gave me healing. And it gave me, and it made me want to have a conversation even more so. Because they need to be aware of it. Because they need to stand with us. All this division doesn't get, Latinos are one of the subpopulations in our society that get the least resources. They're right there. So it's like the ranking is like Black, African American, Latinos, then I want to say Native Americans, and then immigrants. That's like the how the system screws, the levels of screwing that the system does. And Latino, for instance, Latinos are very misrepresented in the military. There's never been anybody above a 3-star general that's been a Latino. And they're only 17% of the population of the military. And they're passed up all the time. Now, if you're a white Latino in the military, you can ascend faster. But if you look Afro-Latino, then you get held back. Whenever
so the difference between a white Latino and a regular Latino is that they...
Wait a minute. Wait. We have to be careful with what we say. When you say regular Latino, it's like, what is a regular Latino? Like, you know, that's the same thing with what's a regular Black person? Because I have known Haitians with green eyes and blonde hair and white skin that are lighter than me. And they're Haitian.
The stereotypical.
White.
So,
you have the African.
I think,
so
thank you for
what
calling.
do you mean by regular?
Thank you for calling me on that. So I think we're talking about here at the very beginning, at the very beginning, you know, we had the natives, right? And the natives who were here were different shades. Before Christopher Columbus came, there were natives here and they were different shades, right? The ones...
Let's stop there. That's perfect. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think that that's so perfect. Let's actually talk about the IBM GM program so that people understand actually how people got different colors throughout the world. Let's just start there. So about 20 years ago, this is 20 years ago for me. I was in my career. I had already started my career out of college. And IBM and National Geographic did a project. IBM paid for it, National Geographic did the work. And they did a genome project where they took the genetic material of 1 million people to assess how the human race had and diaspora had occurred out of Africa. How the human race had begun in Africa, and then how did they migrate and inhabit the rest of the world? How did we get people all over the world? That's what the whole point of the study was. So they found, these were the findings of the study. As we know, the Earth has had various ice ages. The last ice age was 20,000. They've been different levels. 60,000 years ago, the Earth was, Africa has always been warm, thank the Lord, because, you know, heaven on earth has always been warm. But the rest of the world was ice block. So we really couldn't leave Africa and travel to the rest of the world because we were in an ice age. 60,000 years ago, the first ice lift, the ice starts to lift. So we begin to have, and there's a recession of ice in the lower part. So we're looking at Mesopotamia, we're looking at like the Middle East, we're looking at India, all that area now is ice free. So now we can migrate out of Egypt, take in the Middle East, come down through India, inhabit China. Yes, Chinese people are African. Martial arts is African. The only reason why it wasn't kept in Africa is because Africans was a culture where you're constantly trading and interacting with other culture, where the Chinese culture decided to be isolationist. So they were able to keep the art form very pure to what it began 3,000 or 4,000 years ago in Africa. Let's get this straight. Everything comes from Africa. So you're Black. If you're not Black, because you were brought over through the whole slave tragedy, you're Black, just everybody's Black. And then, so let's explain, that's how we have Indian, people actually from India. That's how we have the Middle East inhabited. That's how we have the China in that area, the bottom part. 40,000 years later, after that, we get another break in the ice. Asia, we can go into Asia now. We can populate, we can come up north a little higher, and we can take up of Asia. 20,000 years after that, we had another ice age, and that breaks us into Europe. And we're able to now migrate into Europe. So really, it takes 60,000 years out of the presence of direct sunlight every day for genetically a human being to evolve to be white. Why do you become white? Because white reflects the sun. And they live in the places, remember, the ice age had broken to an extent where people could inhabit it, but the climate in Europe was still very cold and covered with ice. So blue eyes and light skin and light hair reflect light. So that's why, and they were in areas that are not covered, there's no shrubbery, they're getting direct sunlight on them. So the skin over time, it's an evolutionary change that like every other animal that evolves, human beings evolved from black to white. I believe, I do not know this, do not quote me on this, but I know for a fact that all Asians are also black because everybody's black. I believe that the Asian trait of the slanted eye, I know that that's just extra skin. It's a genetic trait that you have an extra layer of skin on your eyelid. So I believe what happened, why you have people with a group of people with slanted eyes that we call like Chinese or Japanese, is because their isolationist culture, genetically that pool, they would have continued to breed that same gene, right, and it stayed within themselves. And because they didn't for other people, they kept the gene in. So it probably showed up as a mutation in one person, but because they stayed concentrated breeding, they were able to keep the eye that way. But everything comes from Africa. And then like in that first, I forgot to mention, in the first migration, when they came out 60,000 years ago, they inhabit the Middle East, they inhabit India, they inhabit Asia. And then at that time, remember, we have continental drift. So the continents are shifting apart. Thousands of years ago, the continents were closer. So you could actually walk from Asia through across the Bering Straits, come down through Alaska. This is how the Americans were populated. Come down through Alaska, populate Canada, populate North America, populate the Caribbean and Central America, populate South America. And that's how the world was inhabited.
Right.
So everybody is Black, technically.
So let me just pause you really quick, okay? So as we're talking about where we are now, you're looking back to try to say, hey, we're all one humankind. We're all one species. Mm-hmm. You know, we've just been in these different regions for 10, 20, 30,000 years. And that's why we've evolved into what we now identify as races.
Mm-hmm. And there are 3 races: white, Black, and Asian, as identified by science. But
so where does Indians fall?
That's what I was gonna say, because Indians are Asian. India is on the Asian continent. Got it. But when we think of Asian, we think of people like yellow skin,
Native Americans.
Native Americans are actually Indians that crossed over from real Indians that crossed through the Bering Straits into the Americas.
So they're Asian.
They're real Indians. They're Asians.
Got it.
Technically, yes.
And the Aborigines in Australia, they're very dark with straight hair.
They're Asian.
Okay.
Like they're Indians. That, remember, Australia fit. If you look at a map, I don't have one here, but yeah. Australia fits to the gap that the peninsula of India creates. Now, if you look at all the continents, they fit in.
Here's something to me that's interesting, right? So what we're talking about here is something that happened 60,000 years ago. And the thing is, we've just evolved with different features. And now we're at an interesting time in history when we have now that we spent 60,000 years in the mountains of Asia, Australia, North America, Africa, now we're beginning to come back together. And this is an interesting, this is an interesting time because we're coming back together, and now the narratives, oh, so-and-so is different from you. So-and-so, you know, you're light skin, they're dark skin. This means that, that means this. All of these different narratives now are becoming a problem. So all of these things that you're saying is your attempt to say, let's
but a problem wait to who, Lexi? Because this is not a coincidence. There wasn't really racism until there was colonialism. Until, you know, in the old days, people lived in more mixed society and more accepting of different religions and different beliefs and within the same city. In the old world, what we call the new world, when we come over here, now you need a class that's going to support the other class that wants to conquer. So they tried with the indigenous people first, but the indigenous people were also very isolationist to an extent. They did not have the genetic, they didn't have the immunodeficient, they had not, because they were isolationists and not exposed to different cultures and different trading like Africans were, right? Genetically, they had not created an immune system that was exposed to different bacterium and different viruses. So when the Europeans came in, they were wiped out very easily because they had the immune system, everything was new to them. Now the Africans that were the enslaved people that were brought from Africa, because Africa has always been the beginning and always has had trade and always has had shared its culture and interaction with every country on earth. Genetically, they've been exposed to different bacteria and different viruses. So strong, they found them to be stronger. Where the Indians died very easily in this hemisphere when they were enslaved, the Blacks did not. So that increased the demand for Blacks in this hemisphere and the slave trade.
I was just pointing out that we're now at an interesting point in history. After 60,000 years of drifting into these pockets, now people are coming out of all of these pockets and coming back into shared communities now. And we have to now reintegrate. And what you're describing and what you're trying to talk about is you're explaining the roots of the separation that preceded this reintegration that we're having right now. And you're attempting to say we should not be having a problem, but we are having a problem because we've been fed the messages of the other.
Yes. And, you know, our commonalities are much more than our differences. I did some work years back when I was doing my graduate degree at the New School with immigrant leaders. And we looked at internalized racism and how it affected our ability to lead. And did we pass it on to the people that we were leading when we were leading? So we really had to looked at all the isms: classism, sexism, ageism, colorism. And what we got, you know, I don't have Muslim friends. Not because I have anything against them, just because I have never been around a Muslim family or in school. I didn't have, when I was growing up, there wasn't like, wasn't around anyone Muslim to become their friend. So I had never interacted with Muslim women, and I didn't know what they were told or how they were brought up or what their ideals were, you know. And in this workshop series, we really got that. And, you know, it was like 3 Latinas, 2 whites, 1 like Asian, like I think she was Chinese, and a person from India and a person from the Middle East. And those 3, the 3 Asian people were all Muslim. And although their ethnicities were different, the religion was the same, the ethnicity they were told the same messages that they tell us Latin women. That we can't do it, that our place is home just to raise children, that we shouldn't educate ourselves. All the oppressive things that have been said to Black women and Latin women are said to women around the world. And as long as they keep us separated, we don't get to see that these narratives are being told to all of us and that they're all false. And then as long as we're separated, they can keep doing what they're doing to us. Like John Mayer, when they control the information, they can bend it all they want.
And that's a big point here. If you're pro women and pro equality, you have to understand that there's a lot of women around the world who are being fed messages of inferiority, and these messages are empowering the men to separate themselves and leave women behind. And that's still happening in a lot of places, even in America.
I agree. I agree.
I wanted to ask you this. Now,
Yes.
your family's watching. You want to share this with your family. What do you want them to get out of this? What do you want them to their takeaway to be?
Anybody watching this, I want their takeaway to be that there is not, that although we identify because we see 3 different races, we're really just one race. We're all Black. We all come from Africa. And then that's one. And in knowing that and getting out the detailed explanation that I gave of how we became all these different shades and all these different ethnicities and cultures and colors and races, in knowing that we learn to respect each other, that we learn to be more united. And also for the people that are white Latinos to start to become conscious of what their Afro-Latino counterparts are going through. Because regardless, we're both part of Latinidad, which is the Latino culture.
So one more time, Latino.
One more.
Finish. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
So Latino is an ethnicity.
Yes.
So what is the definition of that?
Okay, so your ethnicity is your culture. Your culture, as the professor specifically described it, it's your language, your culture experience. It usually is a unifying cultural experience, and you come from the same geographic area. But now, one more thing also that I want not only everybody to take away. Let's talk about something very real. Let's talk about colorism. And not only in Latino, let's take it out of the spectrum, because there's colorism. The conversation of colorism needs to happen.
I think she got disconnected. I'll give her a second. She'll find her way back. Here she is. Yvette, turn on your audio. There you go.
So colorism also happens in the Black culture. Let's take it there, right? The same way I feel in the Spanish culture, I'm like the bottom of the totem pole, right? There's this Latina women that are Afro-Latinas in particular are hypersexualized. You know, half of it is the European, the history of these women being used to satisfy every European desire and wish and fetish, right? So, and then there's parts of, it's funny to me being a Latina, because I look at this and it's like people are not racist and they don't even realize they're racist. Like some men are actually attracted to Afro-Latinas because they see them as something exotic and different. But in the sense of you wanting to own a jaguar or own an exotic animal. You understand? They don't even get that they feel that by having a Latina, they have something that no one else has, but not so much because they value it, just because it's taboo and it's something that everybody doesn't have. So now, you know, when you see colorism in Black America, you see someone like, let's see, a Beyonce or a Solange, you know, and then you see darker skinned women not getting the same opportunities that light skinned women get. And then you see conflicts between darker skinned Black women and lighter skinned Black women. And you see lighter skinned Black women getting being in all the videos, being in all the TV shows, being afforded more opportunity than dark-skinned women. So it's not only happening in the Latino culture, it's happening in the Black culture across the board, whether you're West Indian. So somebody like Rihanna, that's like culturally ambiguous, that they love that exotic look. You know, you don't know what you are, you're just beautiful. And so, you know, our culture still favors that woman that looks more, that has European features in her.
Sure.
To a woman that's more completely Black genetically when you look at her. So that it's not, it's conditioning that's happened. I think it's really coming again with slavery, with the conquistadors. We think of the conquistadors on the Spanish side too, but the rest of the Caribbean, the West Indians, they just didn't speak Spanish. They were conquistadors too. They were just French and from other countries.
Who are the conquistadors?
Conquistadors is a word, it means to conquer in Spanish. So we're talking about like Ponce de Leon, Christopher Columbus, the people that discovered the New World. Mind you, Egyptians had been traveling to the New World for 2,000 years. We have African relics in the new archaeological sites in the Americas. So the pyramids that you find, let me just say this little point that I find so interesting. In the building materials of the pyramids in Mexico, they found papyrus that's only found they found traces of papyrus that's only found in Egypt. So that means that the people that made the pyramids in Egypt were training or giving direction to the people that made the pyramids in the New World. And the pyramids all fall on a geographic, the earth has a grid on it, and all sacred sites, for some reason, Stonehenge, the temples, the pyramids, they all are on this, they land on these grid points, which implies that these spiritual sites are sharing energy in some sort, and there's a spiritual network between these archaeological sites.
I think the interesting thing about that for me is that, like, in today's time, we know so much about technology and radio frequencies and all of these things, but we're not tapped into those things.
I think as we get more technical, man, I believe the Black man is God. You know, we are the physical manifestations of God. We are the creation of God. And
as you're saying, the Black man is God, and you're saying
Black was first.
So
Black was first. When
Right.
God created, Adam was Black. If we know by science that Black is first, Adam was Black.
Adam was Black, but we're all Black. So the Asian man is also God. The white man is also God.
Yeah, because when I say Black man is God, I'm taking it back to me saying what I said earlier, that there's only really one race. Right. These constructs have been made when colonialism and oppression was necessary to create a financial structure that was wanted by the Europeans. Exactly. Before this wasn't an issue. So
I think a lot of what we're talking about here is the stigmas and trauma and the effects of colonialism.
Yes.
Here we are right now in this moment. And I think as a society, we want to move forward. You know, I think most of the people want to move forward. So as we're talking about moving forward, we have to look at what do we want to change? What do we want to stay the same? Like, where are we going? What is the goal? So I think the conversation that we're having is tied into that. We're trying, you know, most of us are doing the day-to-day work. We work 40 hours a week. You know, we don't really have time to have these conversations. We don't have time to worry about these things. We kind of leave it to the politicians. We leave it to the people who are guiding humanity. And I think the reason why it's important for someone outside of that group to have the conversation is because those people have a vested interest in slowing down the needle of time, shifting towards where we are inevitably going. meaning that if all of your investors want things to stay the same and you have a report that's going to upset your investors, you're slow to put out your report, right? So at this point, we're talking about healing our society, putting down some of these differences, the colorism, the classism, the sexism, all of these isms are dividing us, right? The Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, I think one of the things about right now that makes me excited and want to continue this work is that a lot of us are looking at the division in politics right now. And we're seeing that it's really causing a problem for society to move forward. We're acknowledging it publicly. And I think that's exciting. Did you pay attention to this Rittenhouse case?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us a little bit about it? Give us some context. What did he do?
Well, the Rittenhouse case is a case of basically they're trying to turn into a Second Amendment issue. What happened was it was in where was it exactly? I don't remember.
I think it was Texas.
Kenosha. Isn't it in Kenosha? But I don't remember exactly what Kenosha was stated to. Well, anyway, basically there was a racial protest, and Kyle Rittenhouse, 17, decided that he was going to come in from another state with a rifle and be a vigilante and protect people's properties that he didn't even know. And basically, he ended up shooting three people, killing 2 and wounding the other. But this situation is really crazy to me because it's a white guy that was acquitted for killing 2 white men. We're really used to white men getting acquitted all the time for killing black men. But seeing a white man acquitted for killing other white men was very surprising. I didn't know throughout the trial. Usually, if this would have been a black victims, I would have already, before the trial finished, already assumed that he was not guilty. But I really did not know how they were going to. I was really, because it's kind of unprecedented that you see white on white killing is in an abusive way. I mean, I'm sure white people kill each other all the time. But I mean, usually what the narrative that we know as black people is, the Breonna Taylors and all these other unfortunate, disgusting things that.
So why do you need to shoot people to protect property?
Because actually, you see, you can look at this from 2 ways. I'm a politics and economics major. So if you really are American and go by the Constitution, our Constitution actually creates, the language in our Constitution actually creates for what he did to be correct. The right to bear arms and protect your property and other people's property. So he was very emboldened to do so. Now, do I think that if he would have been black, he would have been found not guilty? That's the real question, Alexi. What that case really opened up, really showed us was that the legal system is always biased to white regardless. They figure out a loophole some way, somehow. He was able to raise $2 million for his legal defense. There is no black boy that would have raised $2 billion. Let me not say that because there's a lot of black power and a lot of black money.
I think what you're trying to say is that if he was black, he would have been so villainized that by the time the first day of trial happened, everyone would have said, oh, he's a crazy nigger with a gun. He's a nigger killing white people. He hates white people. He has mental health problems.
This is our whole point. This is why police have the right to treat black people unfairly and treat them with a prejudice because they're dangerous, they're savages, they're uncivilized. That's how we would have been looked at if we would have went out with an AK strapped to our body, shooting people that we don't know for properties that we don't know. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It just showed me how perverse racism really is and how it just like its tentacles and it's just leak into every part of our society. But then also, from a legal perspective, if I was a lawyer, it is justified by the legal structure that we have. What he did is not against the law, and again, in our legal structure, in our constitution.
Let me get this
now,
straight.
The legal structure is not applied equally.
Help me out here. So I have a gun. There's a protest happening downtown. I'm allowed to take my gun, go downtown, and protect downtown from rioters.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? That's legal.
Yes. Yes. Right now in our statutes, that's the legal right. Now, the problem is, how is that applied? Because if you go into a middle-class Black neighborhood and everybody's strapped and there's riots and people come outside and a white kid gets shot, a Black doctor is going to jail. So if it was the white kid was a meth head from a trailer park, that Black doctor is going to jail.
So what we're talking about here is that justice is not blind. The goal that we're working towards is to have a legal system that does not see color. That's where we should be heading, right? It doesn't matter if it's a white kid or if the victims are white or if the victims are Black. Technically, it shouldn't matter. But the fact that we're having...
It's not the system. It's not the legal system. It's the people, because the laws were written fairly. What's happening is the people are the ones that are applying. The jurors are the ones that get to interpret the law based on their biases. And that's where we have discrimination. The law is not discriminatory. It's like if you put a rule in your school, nobody can wear Black sneakers. But you don't say nothing to the white kids when they wear Black sneakers, and you send the Black kids home when they wear Black sneakers. You understand? The rule is not the issue. It's the implementation that is not implement. It's not accountable. The people are not as accountable as Black people. Accountability is not the law that we're holding them to the law the same way.
Yvette, let's take a quick break.